Thank you for joining me for this episode of Colton High Screencasts. I am your host, Mr. Dollins. Interaction, curiosity, exploration. These are the buzzwords for 21st century learning, and all are super essential to encourage in our students. But how exactly do we do that? The old ways of doing things are continually proving to be dated and ineffective. Kids spend more time engaging in their digital worlds than they do in the classroom. One of the best solutions for this are HyperDocs. Developed by teachers Lisa Highfill, Hilton, and Sarah Landis, HyperDocs replace the worksheet method of delivering instruction. At their most reductive, they can be an online worksheet, but at their best, they are an entire lesson in a Google Doc. These are deliberate, well-crafted lesson plans that invite students into a visually engaging experience. So let's get started setting up a basic HyperDoc using one of the templates from the HyperDocs website. We begin our project on the HyperDocs website, which is a robust resource compiled by the HyperDoc girls. Here on this template page, you will see a wide array of HyperDoc lesson formats, fit for pretty much any curricular area. For my lesson, I am going to use the Explore, Explain, and Apply template. The lesson I am going to create today is called Understanding the Sonnet. I want my students to understand the characteristics of a Shakespearean sonnet and be able to write rhyming couplets in iambic pentameter. To start my HyperDoc, I will create a new Google Doc in my Google Drive. Once that opens, the first order of business is setting the backdrop. Like a painter puts a color foundation on their canvas, I want to create a colored backdrop. To change the color of the page, I will select the page setup from the File menu. From this pop-up, I can adjust the orientation of my document, widen the margins, and of course, set the color. I want my document to have an old parchment-like feel to it, so I'm going to use a cream color for the background. I also want wider margins, so I'm going to set them all at 1/2 inch. As simple as just clicking in each of the fields and typing over them. Once you're ready, click OK. Now that the base is set, let's set up the title. Like all docs, this is as simple as selecting your font, the font size, and your justification setting. I want something script-like, so I will use this great font called Homemade Apple. Size it at 24 points and center justify it. What I want to call it is Understanding Sonnet. Once I get to the second line, I'm going to reduce the font back to the core font that I want to use, which is this nice font called Encode Sans Condensed. As you can see, when you click the arrow, it gives you a lot of options for different styles for the font. The basic is normal, and so I'm going to start there. I'm going to size it down to 12 for the whole document, and then I'm going to go back to my left justify setting. The next step is starting my activities. I prefer inserting tables to create space for setting up my digital activities. To set a table, you go into the Insert menu and select Table. The most challenging part of creating any table, though, is figuring out how many columns and rows you need. Since this first section is the Explore portion of the lesson, I want to have students read and see if they can identify the basic characteristics of a sonnet on their own. So I'll need a title, directions, a place for the sample sonnet, and areas for students to type in their observations. So for me, that should be about 2 columns and 7 rows. To whip this chart into shape, I will need to color the cells, set the fonts, sizes, justifications, but I'm also going to need to merge the cells in order to make the space look the way I want it to. By right-clicking, you can easily manipulate your table by merging, setting table properties, distributing rows and columns, which is really important if you want the sizes to be balanced. So for this, I'm going to merge these top 2 cells, which will be my title. I definitely want to have it as a different color to contrast with the page, so I'm going to select this rose color for it. Then I'm going to change the font for this to Encode Sans, but I'm going to use bold, and I'm going to center justify it. I'm going to call this section Explore Part 1. Then, for the directions, I'm going to need to merge these cells as well. And I want this and all the rest of these cells to be white, once again, to create the contrast in the page. For the directions, I'm going to change the font over here to a semi-bold. So that way it's not exactly the same look as the top part, but it's the same font. So I'll type in the directions later. But the next part is I want to have a place for me to put an image file of a sonnet that I want. So I'm going to merge all of these together. That way I actually can put my image file there. Now you can go online and find your image files in a variety of different places, and it's just as simple as copying and pasting. I've already got the pasting part done. So as you can see, I've now submitted it into this section, and so I'm ready to go. I also want to have this centered too, because it doesn't look right when it's not centered exactly. And I also want to adjust the table properties. So I can adjust the cell's vertical alignment so it can kind of go towards the middle. Then over here in this section, I now have my area where I'm going to have the students make observations. I want them to make at least 4 observations. So here is the direction for them. And for this one, I'm going to use a medium font. The features I noticed in this sonnet were, so here's where number 1 will go. So I'll just click the number. In the second cell, you're going to see that you're going to get number 1 again. But if you want to fix that, you can always go up here to Bullets and Numbering, List Options, and go Continue Previous Numbering. And you would have to just continue doing that over and over for each of them. I also don't like it that they're too far over. So I'm going to highlight all the cells, and then I'm going to fix the indentation. I'm going to go over a couple here, so that way they're a little closer to the margin. But you'll notice that this number 4 is much larger than the others, and I don't like that either. I would like them to be equal to one another. So to do that, I'm going to highlight them all, and I'm going to click Distribute Rows. And now that allows all of them to be equal in size. So the one thing, though, is as a student, if I were looking at this, I would just be like annoyed by all the lines. So I'm going to get rid of some of these lines in order to make this look a little bit more pleasant. So the way to do that is by clicking in the cell and clicking these little arrow boxes, which allows you to select parts of the cell. So if I wanted to get rid of this line down the middle here, I could highlight all of these, click the drop down, select that side, and then a menu up here pops. I can now color these. So I'm going to color the line white. So the line's still there, but now it's disappeared. And then I can go through each of these one by one, and I can do the same. And so now I can begin to get rid of all those extraneous lines, which will make this look a lot more pleasant. So as you can see, now we have a nice box, and we have everything set over here, and all I have to do is just add in the directions. Now I want to create part 2 of my Explore section, which will provide students an opportunity to learn about sonnets by selecting from a variety of curated resources. I want students to have 6 options from which they will select 3. As they review these resources, they will take notes on the HyperDoc. So to do this, what I will do is, again, insert a table. So I want 6 resources, so 3 on the first line with an area for them to take notes, and then 3 on the next one with an area to take notes. But I also, again, need a title and I need instruction. So I will need a 3x6 section. So once I have that, like I did before, I will merge the cells. So that way I have that. And then I will have my place for the instructions right here. So I need to merge those. I will once again do the coloring by selecting the color wheel and putting in a rose color. I like that. I will center justify, set my font here to bold, size it to 14, and then that way I can type part 2, discovery. And here, again, I will make that along with pretty much all of these for right now. I'll make them all white again. Then, again, set the font. So in this one, it will be semi-bold. And then directions. And I'll put the directions in again in a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have images in each of these and notes here. So the image sections, I'm going to also color those a rose color, as you can see here. So that way there's kind of a match. But now I don't like the way this looks. It's just too ungainly. So I want to create some space. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert a row below the directions. I'm going to color this row, the cream color of the document, and then using the line selection tool, I am going to select the lines, and I'm going to recolor the lines. So that way I get rid of them. So now it looks like there's this lovely little space here. So it looks like two separate activities going on. So with this, I would just go and find the resources, which I've already selected. And so the resources I will put here, and in these sections, I will have for notes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to center justify these sections. And I'm going to underline and call them notes. And I will copy and paste that in that section as well. So that way it's all there. Then I can start inserting my images. The first resource that I found was this link to Crash Course for Literature. And so I'm going to be using that site. There's a nice video on sonnets that they have. And so I want to use that particular resource for students to be able to watch that video. But of course, right now it's just an image. So I have to link this to the website. So I would go and get the website link, and then I would click on link, open up the link, and write it. So the link is there, click apply, bam. Once they click it, the link shows, and there we go. Now I know that it works. And so now I'm going to pick my other ones. I found this great one from the Poetry Foundation. And so so that's also something available. And so we'll obviously link to that one. And then this one is on Shakespeare Online. All right, so in order to save time, I've just added all the other ones in here, so that way I don't have to worry too much about wasting your time watching me do the tedious parts here. So what I'm going to do now is I want to go ahead and I want to change this, the formatting of my cells here, because the cells themselves need to be more middle, because things like the Schmoop logo here is all over the place. So I want that to happen. Additionally, what I want is I don't want this to be on two separate pages. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control Enter, which now puts it on the second page. It creates a page break. So that way students can come down here. I want to make sure that all of these cells have the same size. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight them, click Distribute Rows, and now they will all be the same size. Well, you can see the notes here now suddenly are in the middle. So we have to go back to Table Properties, select Top for the vertical alignment. And so those now are all fine and good to go. And so everything is good to go for this part of the activity. So now all students have to do is click on a link, watch the video or read the article, type in their notes, and they only have to do it for 3 of them. So they're good to go. All right. So the rest of this document is going to look pretty much just like this. I'm going to have 2 more sections, which would be the Explain section, followed by the Apply section. So we're going to go ahead and just move forward, and I'm going to take you to a more finished document so you can see how this looks. So as you can see here, we've now created a place for collaboration. And by doing that, I've created a link here for a Google Meet. So this way students will know to go to Google Meet, and this will link them to the Google Meet website so they can set up a meet with their classmates. Then they will paste their link here for me, so that way I can be able to know that they had a meeting, and then they have questions to answer so I can see that they're collaborating. Because a HyperDoc doesn't just have to be something you can do individually. You also can work together with other people, which is very important in the distance learning period that we're in right now. Then you can see here, just like before, there's an explanation piece. This is like a writing prompt. It's real very simple. And then the last part here with applying, here is a link to an instructional video from Howcast. Students can watch that, summarize it, and then they get to write their rhyming couplets. I've also created links here to a rhyming dictionary to help them with that. And then lastly, in order to show how the HyperDoc works, I've created a link to a Google form. So that way students can go to the form and be able to do some self-evaluation of themselves. So they can go through this Google form, and once they have answered the 4 questions here, then they can click submit, and they're good to go. The assignment at that point would be complete. They could go into my Google Classroom, check that it's done, and everything is great. So as you can see, this entire HyperDoc is an entire lesson. This would be something that might take a couple days in class, and it just gives students an opportunity to be able to work at their own pace. They can collaborate. They have to go through the writing process, apply what they know, and then eventually do a self-evaluation. It's a pretty straightforward lesson, but it's now made a lot more exciting and more interesting, all because of a HyperDoc. As you can see, HyperDocs are a powerful tool for designing entire lessons in a digital space. You can create opportunities for students to demonstrate their knowledge, set in formative assessments, use links for scaffolds, and provide space for application and mastery. It's a very elegant way to approach designing instruction in this digital era, and the applications are limitless. Regardless of your content specialty, you can use HyperDocs to engage your students. Now go give it a try. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully this screencast has not only been helpful, but has inspired some ideas for how you might design lessons for your students. If you would like a copy of this HyperDoc, click on the copy-only link in the comments below, and please don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, this is Mr. Dollins.